Ha ha ha, muted mic. Again, I'll just start it again because I will basically say it exactly how I did earlier. Um, that could have been a smoother start. So thanks for joining in with me amidst my technical difficulties, still working on getting a smoother intro. Yeah, so Thanksgiving this week for all those of you in the United States. I'm really looking forward to that. Per the title card on this open office, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the animated pose application that we talked about last time. And for all of these open office live streams that I'm doing, I'm putting out a project that I'm going to be working on a little bit in public, but that doesn't mean we can't talk about other things too. So I often talk with friends, peers, colleagues about anything from AI, machine learning, ballet, because I'm involved with Deos Contemporary Ballet, and pretty much anything that has to do with entrepreneurship. So let's see here. I'm going to pull up my shared screen here so we can start looking at stuff. And there was this really interesting application. Antonio is a friend of mine on Facebook who was following along on Facebook on the last stream. And he sent me a comment about a company that is doing something pretty similar to what I had been describing. It was an application called Volley, and I'm going to pull their app here up on the screen. And yeah, I had a chance to play around with this a little bit this week. As you can see, I was having a short back and forth with the CEO, Josh Little. Really cool application, and come to find out from Antonio that a business here in Grand Rapids, where I'm based, actually was helping develop some components of this application. It was Atomic Object, that was the name. So yeah, it's this really cool application. I don't know how well this is going to work, me clicking around a little bit. Obviously, I'm currently using my camera, so it's not going to show that. But the idea with Volley, it seems to be very similar to what I was talking about last week, where it's intended to be asynchronous communication rather than shooting off an email, which is also asynchronous communication. You can just talk on video like this. Some of the differences are it's a very linear timeline. I really like that they add in that you can send just straight up text as like a little hyperlink or message or what have you without having to record a video. You can also send animated GIFs. But yeah, it was, I don't know if this is going to play audio wise. But this is the standard intro message I think everybody gets in the initial Volley. I sent him something back. You can see the reply back. I sent him something back. So I really like this linear timeline here, and just the execution on short videos to convey your message in a very personable way without having to type things up. Personally, when I have to type something or write something down, it takes me like 10 times longer because I end up going through this editing process in my mind over and over and over. Whereas video, for me, it's a little bit easier for me to get my thoughts out. I like to work out ideas by talking out loud. I don't get in my way, I think, nearly as much. It took a little bit to get over this initial hurdle of I'm talking live to a population of people and not necessarily getting all the feedback that I normally get. But I found for me, it's a lot quicker to just quick record a video message without having to make sure all my grammar is perfectly correct and that I'm phrasing things a certain way that isn't going to be misinterpreted. Because how many times have you sent a text message or an email where just the tone of that message doesn't get conveyed in the way that you intended, and a whole slew of miscommunication happens? So that's one of the things I love about video is you don't miss out on all that type of stuff. So one of the differences that we were talking about last week that isn't here in Volley is the idea of instead of having your own personal face here, great look. Let's see if I can find an even. Yeah, there we go. There's a more awkward frame. Uh, Instead of having your raw face there, we would use an animated pose. So using computer vision, it would detect where the pupils are, where the outline of the eye is, the shape of the mouth, the jawline, all these different key points on the face. And instead of displaying your face, it would fit an image, right? A cartoon or an avatar, I think is the word we were using before, that fits that on your face. So you might have seen this on your iPhone. This is an Android, but on the iPhone, you have this Memoji, I think it's called, where you can pick an emoji and then put the camera in front of your face, and you can pretty much talk or make your facial expressions, and the emoji becomes animated according to how you're behaving in front of it. And it's the same idea here. There's some sort of structure, an avatar, an emoji that we would be using computer vision to match up key points on the face to key points on that avatar. So instead of displaying your face directly, it would instead display that animated avatar, which will hopefully address what is one of my critical assumptions, that this sort of application, Volley, would get better adoption, or this approach to asynchronous communication would get better adoption if you didn't have to put your face on camera every time you wanted to send a message. I think we've all seen that on Zoom meetings where people are turning off their camera on meetings because of Zoom fatigue, as people call it. And I think the sort of avatar-based approach would probably alleviate some of that pain, right, of having to always be on when you're looking at the camera. So yeah, really cool application here. Encourage you to check it out if you want to play with it. I'm going to be playing with Volley a little bit here and seeing what works, what doesn't work, as I consider doing a little bit more coding effort towards matching up an avatar to key points on the face. One of the other things is I really like how the conversation is displayed down here. However, I think especially if you're going to be doing more than a single topic on a video, right? Like sometimes emails have more than one topic that's being discussed in the email. It'd be really great to almost like thread those conversations or have branches. And I made a visualization for this last time, and I didn't find the time to improve that visualization. So encourage you to take a look at that other video in case you are interested in refreshing what I meant by branching off on different things of the video here. Now that would definitely complicate the UI a bit, but yeah, something to consider. So yes, Volley, really, really cool. I was super stoked. Thank you, Antonio, for passing that along. Really great to see somebody's already working on this. One of the things I mentioned in that brief conversation there about this was the idea of addressing a pain, right? So when I'm going through and evaluating ideas, usually when you have some entrepreneurial idea, there's a lot of assumptions that you make about who the customer is to begin with, what pains they face, the things that they're going to value. So I really like early on in addressing an idea, figuring out what are the most critical assumptions that you're making, And sometimes that can be tough to uncover, especially if you're not talking with potential customers. And so, one of the frameworks that I really, really like for uncovering the sort of customer discovery and figuring out what major assumptions you're making is this thing right here, the value proposition canvas. Strategizer put this out. They've written a number of books. And I love their approach. I think the way that they pull together visualizations and really simplify down the process of designing a value proposition. And I've got another one here for the business model is just a great way to frame a problem. And so, like I said, first off, you have to be talking with people. And that's part of why I'm doing this live stream, to just get feedback from people on what they like and don't like about this idea of animated pose videos, sort of like volley here, but with animation rather than raw video, and see if there is something here. I don't know if there is. But so when you're talking with people, what you're looking for is what pains are you addressing? And so I made the critical assumption that people don't want to be live on the camera, right? They don't want their real actual face to be showing, because then you have this added pressure to be visually engaged, to, control all the little muscles in your face so you're not giving off the wrong impression, which that right there is about as as much effort, I would say, as making sure the text that you're writing in an email isn't going to be miscommunicating. So I had the assumption that that's a pain point for people for wanting to use an application like Volley, for wanting to use video as perhaps a replacement for email communication to be able to collaborate asynchronously. Gains. There's, I think, something to be gained, especially in the remote world, for being able to work asynchronously. I don't think it's necessarily a natural pattern for people unless you can frame it a lot like email. A lot of people hate email, so maybe there's a core assumption there that we're making, that email itself, that method of asynchronous communication, these little bite chunks of messages, are actually a pain that wouldn't be alleviated by video. I'd like to argue that people want more flexibility in how they work. I know a lot of people prefer to communicate via email, so that way it's not on again, right? Like real time. And so I view this as a gain, just like email. But again, this has to do with talking with potential customers and figuring out, do they see that as an actual gain? And if you phrase it in this gain to pain sort of way, you're going to be able to start challenging these critical assumptions that drive your development. And so gains and pains are pretty easy to figure out, almost self-explanatory. But the customer jobs, I think, is a great way to frame up things too. Like, why are people communicating via email today? What are they trying to accomplish? And I think the job is essentially to communicate not in real time, to be able to take in messages when you're able and respond when you're able, regardless whether the other person or not is ready for the response, right? So you don't have to be in a meeting with somebody to be able to communicate. Asynchronous communication. So I won't go much farther into this value proposition canvas because I want to talk about a few other things here. But the idea is, as you talk with customers, you start to solidify what this looks like. And what's really important is this box up here, customer segment. You might find different populations have different gains, pains, and jobs that they're trying to accomplish. So this is an iterative process as you talk with potential customers to figure out, are there different segments of customers that have different jobs, and view those jobs as having different gains and different pains, And then what you do is you form up your value proposition, your offering, to address those pains and to create those gains for a customer. What about asynchronous communication, if we could solve it, would change the world for you, right? And so you might find one or even more value propositions need to be made in order to address your different customer segments. So yeah, I love the value proposition canvas. It's a great tool for being able to organize your conversations with potential customers as you're evaluating an idea very, very early before you spend time coding, because I haven't spent any time coding on this, and hopefully some of this feedback that I'm getting will frame up the value proposition a bit more. So I'm going to just very briefly just breeze right through this canvas. This was one of the first tools I learned while working at Bosch in the business development group on how to organize the progression of your startup. The business model canvas, we've been talking about this value proposition box here with the value proposition canvas. But there's a lot of other aspects to a business model than just the value proposition. You'll see here, you could have a list of value propositions. Often people are using sticky notes and they iterate on this business model canvas. They'll have multiple of them as they're figuring out how do you want to frame up this idea. So you could have multiple value propositions. You've identified different customer segments using that value proposition canvas. And then you have to start filling in all these other blanks. What's the relationship that we have with customers? And what channels do we use to deliver this value proposition to customers? And how you set up all of these components, how you deliver the value and how you get feedback and how you relate with the customer, all sets up what your revenue streams look like. Is this a subscription-based thing? Is this a fixed price sale? Is it performance-based? And then on the other side here, you could make every single component of this value proposition, but a lot of times it makes sense to partner up with someone who already provides a piece of that puzzle. While not technical, a really great example of this is with Deos Contemporary Ballet. Through COVID, a whole bunch of ballet companies were trying to figure out, okay, if we can't do live performances, how do we continue working? And in our conversations with the industry about that, we found out that one of Deos's greatest needs is the opportunity to rehearse at pretty low cost, have an adequate dance space. And so we actually partnered up with a local school, ballet school, and because we had knowledge on how to build a very good dance floor from our previous experiences, we were able to partner up with them and help them improve their dance floors. And through all the other knowledge that we've built up of building a recreational program, we also got the opportunity to leverage their space for rehearsals when they weren't using it. So because we both had key resources and activities that we had in each of our organizations, it made sense for us to partner up to sort of leverage each other's key resources and activities in order for each of our organizations to deliver our value proposition, which is very different. Us, Deos, as a professional ballet company, and Michigan Ballet Academy as a pre-professional and now recreational school. We were able to leverage each other's key activities and resources to deliver these value propositions to customers. So a lot of times there's this drive for engineers turned entrepreneurs in particular to do everything in-house. And that can often be a critical mistake because if you don't have key partners that are providing their own activities and resources to supercharge your effort here, your cost structure is going to look very, very different and probably a lot more costly than you'd want it to be, which can make it really hard to start. Because as much as you can try to save on costs, a lot of times it's best to not worry about trying to trim down costs and instead try to seek greater revenue income. Of course, you have to control your bottom line, but growth usually happens in finding growth on the revenue side. So find those revenue streams so that way you can afford to pay partners to help accelerate you. At least that's the typical approach I look for. All right. So with all of that, let's go back a bit here. I don't think I have a whole lot more to share on a screen, but there is another, well, maybe there's another thing. One of the things that I was thinking about a lot this week on the asynchronous animated or avatar video communication is a similar problem that I've been thinking about for Deos contemporary ballet, and that's accessibility. So if I were to go on a tangent, I'm the king of tangents here. Ballet is a very visual art form, right? So like you can hear the music, of course, but dance is intended to be seen more than anything else. But ballet in and of itself sort of has a reputation as being elitist or exclusionary and all of that type of stuff. And so like even outside of the senses, ballet has a bit of an accessibility problem that we're trying to address as Deos. And when I think about accessibility for the dance form in and of itself, addressing, trying to make it accessible to everyone, the extreme of that is asking the question, how do you make a visual art form accessible to someone who's blind? I have no idea. I haven't started working on that at all, but I think it's a really cool question and a really cool thing to ideate around. And maybe one of these open offices, I'll spend some time ideating around what does ballet or what could ballet feel like or be perceived by someone who is blind. But going back to the animated pose, the asynchronous video, one of the challenges is going to be not everyone can see, right? And so I'm actually going to share this again because it's the Volley app. I didn't mention this earlier, but what I love is they've already included transcripts. So you record a video and it does that speech to text conversion, right? Also using machine learning to be able to give someone who maybe can't see or maybe can't hear, and so they use I don't think, yeah. You have a different medium in which you can consume the message, which this ends up being a lot like email then, but perhaps a much more informal version of email because you're not doing the initial salutation, hello, Josh, since we last spoke, right? You're just talking like video. So this is great. I love that there's a transcript here. There would need to be the exact same thing, whether it's live video or an animated pose. So glad that this sort of accessibility is already baked into this platform. As far as other things of accessibility, video being a very visual medium is really important. I'm wondering how much sort of a sentiment, right? Like people use emoji in email, and that was actually another discussion on the Facebook post about this live video last time, or maybe it was for this upcoming one. Yeah, it was for this live stream. There was a short discussion I had with John Clay about the use of emoji and email, and he lamented the fact that it's viewed as unprofessional when it's so useful. And I agree. I don't mind seeing emoji in email and using emoji too. But in and of itself, people use emoji differently, and it can be kind of tough to sort out what people's intent is, especially the smiley face emoji, which I think is interesting. But it'd be really interesting to see that, there's sentiment analysis for natural language processing, right? So classic project for people getting into this is analyzing tweets, right? And classifying them as being, either positive or negative tweets, or maybe neutral is included in there if you want to get a little fancy. But there's a whole range of emotions that's in there. And it'd be interesting if maybe that could also be pulled into our everyday conversations. There is an ontology, which maybe I should quick do a Google search for that. I think it's emotion ontology. Because one of the challenges is going to be, how do you define the emotions, and how do you, so emotion ontology here. Is there a way for me to look at them all so that way it's a point of discussion? Ooh, that's just straight up XML. That's not particularly handy to take a look at. Anything quick here that could give me a list of them? We'll give it a couple of seconds here. Oh, here we go. Browse terms. This is a little bit better. BFO based, continuant and current. This is something that I've been wanting to get more into, is ontology design. Maybe I should do an open office on that too. Data item. No, that doesn't seem quite right. So emotion's got to be in a current, right? It's not a constant state. Temporal region, no. Process, bodily process profile. Interesting. Well, this is, I guess, something that I'm going to need to understand a little bit more before I try to speak intelligently about it. But what I brought that up to say is, what emotions would you define? And we all know there's probably far more nuance to human emotion than what a computer could potentially recognize in a video here, right? So what are my emotions right now? Am I embarrassed that I didn't have anything to say about this? No. I'm generally somewhat excited about this topic, so there's excitement in there, happiness. There's more to nuance to human emotion than what I think we'd be able to capture straight from computer vision. But are there a couple of key emotions, such as sarcasm, right? Which would be really impressive to be able to capture from a video with audio. So maybe I should do a search for that for the next time. But there's one other topic that I wanted to quick bring up before I closed out today's open office. And that has to do with the accessibility side of computer vision. I have a colleague who's doing a really, really cool project. He calls it the Maria Project. I'm going to drop a link into the destinations that can receive it. So a link to the Maria Project. Yeah, he called it Maria Project. Okay. So this is a really, really cool project. I'll pull it up over here on the screen. In short, it's customized sign language. So Charles has come across an organization and a person who not only has the inability to speak, but she also has a limited range of movement, right? So being able to use sign language, she can sign, but there's limitations to what signs she can make. And so Charles has this really cool application where he's using Microsoft's Azure Percept, which is it's a platform that he and I have used for a couple of different things. Really cool platform. It's got computation. So it's like an edge device, right? So it's got camera, it has microphones, it has a processing unit. So that way you can run custom artificial intelligence modules, right? Machine learned code out on the edge without having to communicate all the way back to a server, which helps with latency. It helps with costs of the system. Since you're not doing as much data travel, you can actually use this thing offline. You don't have to be connected to the internet to use it once it's downloaded the model. And so the idea there is, can you develop something that enables a person to train this system using computer vision to say, all right, instead of this being a sign or this being a sign way up here, if I can't lift my arm up this high, can I change it so it signs down here, which maybe means something else. I don't know American Sign Language, but it would enable people to create a variation of sign language in order to communicate. So the idea here is the camera would see and use see the person signing in their modified sign language, and it would understand the signs and then speak it using the speakers on the system. So anyway, I won't go too much farther into this because Charles can speak far more eloquently than I about this project, and I understand he's making some really cool progress on it lately. So hopefully maybe one of these days I can have him on. He can share some of what he's working on. But yeah, video, computer vision, such a powerful tool for accessibility and communication in general. And I'm really excited to see what other things people can come up with that leverages the power of AI to enable communication for people who maybe either need it or just want to have a better form of communication. So yeah, go check him out. He's got a page, Solismatica, which is his company. He's got all kinds of other videos about this stuff and other things he's working on. So encourage you to check it out. Well, anyway, I think I'm going to call it here. This has been a great open office. I've really enjoyed sharing a little bit about what I'm working on. I'm not quite sure yet what the topic next week is going to be. Maybe it'll be a continuation of the animated pose. Maybe I'll start diving into code a little bit more. Or maybe I'll go through some of the entrepreneurial tools that I use to evaluate ideas and do this quick iteration to figure out what's worth spending time and effort on. If the ballet topics interest you, add in comments and we can chat about that next time. But yeah, I don't have a topic quite yet for next week, so you'll just have to be surprised when I put out the teaser title card a little bit later this week. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving, so it's not going to be today or tomorrow. It might be Friday or even over the weekend, so shorter notice for this one. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Pleasure having you all, and have a good rest of your week. Take care.